Hey everybody, welcome to episode 51 of FoundersGyan and thanks for tuning in. Each week we bring you the inspiring story of a startup and the founders behind it. This week we are featuring Amit Sharda, who's one of the founders of FundExpert.in, a platform to help you easily invest in Indian mutual funds. Do check out the show notes over at foundersgyan.com/EP51, that is EP51. And also starting this week we have a special segment in association with Marcas to answer a few trademark and copyright related queries. So stick around till the end of the podcast to hear about this. In this week's show, we also get into some details around algorithm design for startups, as FundExpert is heavily algorithm driven. So I hope you get some good and useful information in that portion of the show. Alright, let's get the show on the road now. Amit Sharda, welcome to the show. I'm super excited to be meeting you and chatting with you today. Amit is one of the founders of FundExpert.in, an online platform that makes investing in mutual funds effortless with automated fund picks. Amit is a software engineer and MBA with over 17 years experience. His areas of competence includes architecture, design, development and product management, mostly in the financial markets space, a little bit of e-learning and knowledge management space also. Amit has kindly agreed to answer some questions about algorithms for your startup, which will be a part of the show. I'm super excited for that segment particularly. Not that I'm not excited about other segments. Amit, great to meet you. Thanks a lot for taking time out of your busy schedule to share your knowledge, wisdom and time with our listeners.
Thanks, Ram. Pleasure is all mine. So thanks for the nice intro. So
let's talk about your journey.
Yep.
Can you give us a quick 1 or 2 minute brief about your journey before FundExpert? Okay, I gave a very macro level overview. Is there anything specific you want to add?
So prior to FundExpert, I have worked in previous couple of startups and also a couple of big companies like Wipro and the Cisco Group. And my experience with startup, which was into artificial intelligence and e-learning, that experience has helped me a lot to what I'm trying to do now, right? And prior to FundExpert, in this company also, we have worked on a couple of other products, which we'll be talking in the future part of the discussion, right? But ultimately, we are working on financial market space. So FundExpert is our latest venture in that space.
Okay. So explain to us in detail the concept of FundExpert and how did you come up with this idea?
Yeah, sure. So, in a nutshell, FundExpert is a intelligent and automated mutual fund investing platform, right? So, it's one problem what we are trying to address is making it paperless, hassle-free, right? Traditional mutual fund had that pain point. So, one is for people just in 5 minutes you are ready to go type. So, that's one problem which we are solving. The second is we are also trying to build a robo-advisory above that, so that we want to ensure just blindly choosing funds and sitting on it doesn't guarantee whether you will be able to make wealth, right? So robo-advisory is something where we are trying to level the playing field, because the wealthy guys will have access to great wealth managers, and the companies which are institutional companies have very fancy tools to work, right? So we are trying to bridge that gap by providing all this technology and powerful algorithms which can do complete risk profiling, complete goal management for an individual, so that he can be pretty sure he will be having that sort of wealth and money to take care of the goals, right? So that's something. The robo-advisory part is something which we are pretty excited, and it's backed by powerful algorithms which tackles market volatility and all. So we are doing this work for some time. So we now think the product we are in a position where to give this offering to the retail investors.
Okay. Yeah. So how did you come up with this idea? So I already know offline we were chatting before this interview, and Amit, you were telling me that you got this idea and part of it is based on your TradersCockpit, right? If I'm getting the product name right. So tell us a bit more about the origin of the idea. What exactly triggered you to start this?
Right. So the core proposition, as I told, right, whatever we are doing, we are trying to give the investors and the traders the tools so that they can compete with the best. That mantra is there for last 4-5 years. So prior to this, we had a product called TradersCockpit.com, which was tailor-made for professional traders, the most active traders and investors who are at least a bit more informed. So we created all these tools through which powerful algorithms they were consuming for themselves, right? So the TradersCockpit is a tool story which does a lot of data analytics so that people can consume that data analytics to become successful traders. So TradersCockpit has we got decent success in that. We had more than 60,000-70,000 people registered on the site. We have around 40,000 backtested strategies on it. So we had a lot of data analytics and algorithms sitting on the site, right? So that algorithm's power can be taken. So, but direct equity game is not for everyone, right? So there's a niche segment, but not everyone can participate in direct equities. Then our customers were the people who were not able to participate in direct equity. We got a lot of feedback, and we got also feedback from the market that if we can take the same proposition for mutual fund, it may help the masses, right? So we want to scale our algorithms firepower to scale this business which can impact the millions, right? So that's where the idea of FundExpert became, because in India, mutual fund is the instrument through which the retail participation is happening in financial market. Right. So we had to build a product around mutual fund domain. So that's where the FundExpert origin came.
Okay, excellent. Now, for our budding founders listening out there, can you give us some advice on how we can also come up with a good idea?
Right. So what I believe is idea will normally come to mind if you are trying to solve some pain points, right? So idea will only, so either in the pain points which you are experiencing or a very close one of your friend or family. So I think that's normally, if you see a pain point, and then if you can get an idea how to solve that pain point, that's where so that's for me the idea was, for in our case it was all we were trying to solve our pain points. When I was a working professional in the software industry, I was quite fascinated with trading and all. So I find it really tough to trade and work also, right? So I used to come and write my algorithm so that it trades automatically next. So we thought if we can make a product which can help the other working professionals. So I am very sure so if you come across a pain point, definitely, and you think the pain point exists and there's a problem to be solved, that's where I think you should really go for it, right? So I mostly I believe more than idea, it's all about execution. Idea, I can say 20% of things, unless it's a very disruptive idea which not everyone gets, right? So right. I'm talking about a normal person like you and me types, right? So if you can think you have in it you to execute it well, then there's no plan, go forward.
Okay, excellent. That brings me to the next question, which is like you rightly said, an idea is a very small part of the whole puzzle, and execution matters more. So what are some of the steps that we need to take in order to make the idea into a reality? Because there are multiple paths you can choose. There are so many different ways and means you can, you could talk about maybe creating an MVP, or you could talk about market research or business plan. There are tons of things. So in your mind, or in your opinion, or maybe you could take your own story and tell us some high level steps on, once you have an idea, what do you need to do to turn it into a product?
Right. Sure. So I'm not sure whether I'll be able to generalize, but because every idea is the domain is different and all, but I'll try to be maybe share my learnings. So first of all, you need to be very clear, the idea what you are trying to solve, the pain points what you are trying to solve. You have to create a business out of it, right? So you should be very clear, can it be a profitable business or not? Mm-hmm. Right. I've seen a lot of people just start ventures to get funded and all. Maybe that's a social success right now, one of the metrics what we have. But I think if you should start a company and you should try to solve the problem if you are able to make a successful venture out of it. That's one of the successful basically business out of it. It should be a profitable business.
Right.
Maybe it's not scalable enough for the VC or the angels, but if it's not profitable, it will not go anywhere. Right. And second is your vision and passion should be very clear, then, because there will be a lot of hurdles, a lot of day-to-day. But if that is very clear what you want to achieve, right? And the most important part is the team, right? And you have to get that founding team very, very correct. You have to sell your dream to those guys, get them on board, because those are the guys, and you have to, as people say, right? If not, they should be more smarter than you, because those are the guys, and you have to empower them in a way where you have to make yourself redundant down the line. If you can achieve that, that's you have to lose the control, so that the guys can, basically your team can take everything forward. Not everything can be done by alone, right? So that's one thing. And this apart from the team, it's all about I'll say like persistent and perseverance. If it's a bootstrapped company, and if you're a first time entrepreneur, which I'm assuming most of your audience will be, then that's very important, because there will be time where you will be so low and all. But if you are very clear that this is the right way, because you know the best, right? You can people talk about mentorship, people talk about investment. I can say these are all people helping you in the ecosystem, but ultimately it's up to you to decide what is best for me and all, right? So you should be very clear ki ultimate decision making is you. Mentors can give their opinions, but you have to act, because it's your business, you know the best. That's what I believe. Right. So it should be very, very clear, because most of the people talk about mentorship and all, which is good. Should always consult mentors, but ultimately decision is what you need to take.
Okay, excellent.
Right. Yeah.
Great advice there, Amit. Thanks for sharing that. Now, let's talk something personal. We all hear about founders sacrificing their family times to make their ventures a success. Tell us a little bit more about your own family and how you manage business and family or personal time, business and personal time.
Right. So basically the way I see is this, like, okay, my wife is also a software engineer, but and I had a daughter, 2 kids, one elder daughter and a son. So I treat this startup journey like our parent company Gumsham Labs as my 3rd child. So it's actually you have to assume that way, because the startup is like it will take you more time than family. So you're absolutely right, but I think little bit is like it's not that difficult also to manage the family time if you can prioritize your stuff. If you can prioritize your stuff, you have to learn to say no to some opportunities. You need to be very focused what you really want to achieve. So in our case, like, basically there was a dilemma because we were bootstrapped. Either to focus on the product development or on the services part, right? So it was a very lucrative option to do services at some time, but so that is something, if you would have taken everything, maybe it would be really difficult to manage your family life and all. So if you can prioritize the stuff very well, I'm very fortunate to have a family which understands. Both my parents were very supportive about it. But something is basically, it's a little bit overhyped. If you can manage your time well, it's not that difficult also to manage. It's not about entrepreneurship. I think every job has its own pressure, right? So pressure is there everywhere, right? So,
right. Okay. Excellent. Now let's talk about rituals. Is there any daily or morning ritual that you follow? It could be a professional one or a personal one. Some people like to jog or meditate or maybe some people like to first have a call in the first thing in the morning, things like that. Is there anything set like that you have to do on a daily basis? Can you share Can you share this with myself and our listeners?
Sure. So with 2 growing kids, it's difficult to stick to a plan, but we try to basically, me and my wife, we try to spend half an hour for a walk at least 4 times a week, if not more. So that's the time we discuss normally, exchange ideas also. And the other thing, from a professional point of view, I try to give at least 10-15 minutes to myself from a bigger picture. Not on a day-to-day minute things that normally takes your office time, but I think something from a product bigger picture, like what are the next set of features or what customers are looking for. So that is something which I think normally for me it has worked always, that morning first 2 hours are the most productive time. If I give myself 10-15 minutes, the best feature modules what I've done, the idea have come in that. So I definitely give 10-15 minutes of time to myself, if nothing else, right? So
okay, great. Now let's take a little bit of time and get into the algorithm part of your startup. So based on your profile, I think you also agreed that you will talk a little bit more on this. So we will start off with a very simple question. Now, basically for our listeners, we were talking offline before the interview, and FundExpert algorithm is based on the existing one of the existing algorithms of TradersCockpit. So it's not an algorithm that you can just build off the shelf. It takes years of effort to build an algorithm that comes with FundExpert. But there are a lot of off-the-shelf algorithms available that a lot of startups want to try and customize to meet their own startup. So we will try to have the section from that point of view. So you already had an existing algorithm in TradersCockpit, and you had to modify that to fit FundExpert. So what are some high-level steps you took?
Right. I'll try to address your things. It's basically as we covered. TradersCockpit is for direct equity players, right? So it can be for day traders to traders who are taking a position for 5 days. For like a short-term trader to a day trader is something who takes a position and his algorithms covers the positions on the same day, right? And then they are like long-term traders, right? So what we did right was we created a platform using which this backtesting and algorithm creation was made easy for our own research team, for ourselves, and for some real smart guys who were using TradersCockpit, who are our early customers, right? So once we did that abstraction, it was like it became the place for the smartest guys in India who were traders. So they adapted our platform. So it solved that problem a bit easier. Because that gave, and last 3 years, 4 years we were into this field. So we had a library of algorithms which works pretty well for direct equity. In FundExpert, because it's for mutual fund, right? We did some analysis and figured out, because mutual fund is also a derivative product of direct equities, like most of the equity direct. So we thought, we did some testing, and we figured out there's a huge correlation between both the asset classes. So we took the same algorithms and tested against the mutual fund data and the indices, which are very, very closely related to mutual funds, and we were amazed to see it works pretty much the same. So in that way, it's asset agnostic. The algorithms were asset agnostic. So for us, it was easier to, of course, some customization has to be done. Some algorithms are tailor-made for FundExpert, like choosing the right fund. That algorithm is not there. That's a very different, choosing a right stock and a right fund. So that may be a new algorithm, but when to rebalance, when to come out of a trade, of a fund, when to switch a fund, those algorithms definitely we are inheriting from the TradersCockpit suite.
Okay, so let's talk about these new algorithms that you incorporated into FundExpert. Now, obviously, it's in a very short interview, we cannot cover the in-depth of how to build an algorithm and things like that. But if we take that, I want to create a new algorithm for a specific, one of our listeners out there might be having an idea which needs an algorithm. So how do you advise the listener to approach this problem? What would you start with a, say, flowchart, or what's the best way to come up with an algorithm?
Yeah, if I've understood the question correctly, this is something which is like very core to your business, right? So one thing I'm very sure, one of the co-founders, or if not more, have to basically have that domain knowledge of the startup which you are trying to address, right? So for us, it's like financial sector, trading, equities, mutual fund. So because this is the work which you can't be dependent on, or you can't outsource to anyone else. Some pieces of technology you can outsource, but this is like the heart of the product, right? So if I'm just hypothetically, if you are trying to solve something like a algorithm on a transport.
Let's take transport.
So either you need to have a prior working experience in a similar sort of a thing, mm-hmm. or you need to have a very solid research background, so that, because this is something which you'll not be able to pick off the shelf. This is not the skills which is very easy to pick, right? So I'm assuming if someone is trying, so that is.
So let's assume the person already has a background and on the domain. Could you kind of maybe elaborate a little bit on some of the basic design principles of algorithms, maybe that would help a new startup? I'm sure like a lot of people might just give up, that, I have to design a huge algorithm that takes care of so many things. So is there some basic design principles that we can follow to build algorithms?
Okay. I think when we're talking about, like, for us, this algorithm is the heart of everything, right? So this is something when you are in that mode, whether you to take a plunge or not, we were very clear ki something. So that I'm assuming, like, if that sort of thing, that questions we need to have that answered before we start, right? If you're not able to crack that algorithms, there's no proposition at all. So traders, so that's one thing. The second thing is, in a layman term, what is algorithm? Algorithm is like a set of rules, right? A set of rules, and then you do you assign ki if this condition happens and if this doesn't happen and that happens. take this decision, right?
Right.
So in a layman terms.
Right.
So we thought like, because for a Traders Cockpit point of view, we wanted, because everyone has something which is very peculiar to what works for him in markets, right?
Right.
But what people didn't had was what is in their mind, if there is something which they can put it together and test it to figure out without losing hard-earned money,
right,
whether it works or not.
Right.
So that was something which we figured out, that there was a need for that sort of a tool. But if I ask you to write those algorithm in some programming language, then there's a showstopper for that.
Correct.
So these were the two pain points which we addressed. Okay, people have some domain knowledge and they want tools to test it out. So we made that abstraction out so that they can create English type of rules and put it together in simple terms, as you rightly told, so that they can backtest that first, figure that out whether that algorithm is running for me or not. So same tools are used by our team. Same tools the tools which we were using internally, we also opened up for our customer base.
If you like this show, do follow us on Facebook and Twitter. The link is www.facebook.com/FoundersGyan and twitter.com/FoundersGyan. Both these provide you daily tips and articles as well as resources to help and inspire your startup. There are multiple tips per day. Some examples of these tips would be articles on the latest startups, growth hacking tips, how do you build team for startups, how to get funding, etc. So don't forget facebook.com/FoundersGyan and twitter.com/FoundersGyan. Okay. So let's just take a step back. Yeah. So you just mentioned that algorithms are nothing but simple sets of instructions. So I think we will take it from there. So I'm getting a little bit technical here. So is in your mind an algorithm and a flowchart one and the same, or do you see a difference between an algorithm and a flowchart? If I can draw a flowchart, yeah, is that an algorithm?
What I understand is like flowchart maybe a little bit at a higher level, where you're trying to address the complete workflow of the complete product, right?
Right.
So maybe there may be a use case where some particular components of a flowchart maybe have to be translated into few algorithms itself. So suppose you're trying to solve some business problem, right? So you may have the flowchart may be at a high level. This first is like how we will acquire users, then why will users come to our site, what is that USP what we are providing. That USP part itself can be a set of very very high engineering algorithms which you have to code.
Right.
But if first you have to come up with a flowchart, you have to figure out what is the key differentiation, what is right now not, when you do a SWOT analysis, this is not there right now in the competition, this is the pain point what people are looking for, this is not there right now in the market, or if it's there, there's a way to improve it.
Right.
And then take that piece and try to break it. Okay, how will you be able to serve it? So there I think you will come to know, okay, if I add this algorithms to my product, right? It may reduce the latency, or it will give you this more insights, right? So that is nothing but that. So algorithm will be very very specific to your business problem.
Correct.
And then you should be competent enough to what you are thinking. What if the pseudocode, if you are able to write in English, right? You should be. I think that's not a big problem to convert into a working piece of code, which is like. So that's normally happens. So in our case, it was like. We had to write, so there's so much market data, right? And there's so much it's all live data, so much parameters we have to do. So we tried combination of different parameters to see what is more relevant. Market response to the stock prices, respond to which type of indicators more, right? So this combination of that leads to so many algorithms in our case.
Okay, and that's great inputs there. Now in terms of the algorithms itself, so you're just mentioning that there could be so many different pieces of algorithms and things like that. Are there any tools that are available that can be used to generate these algorithms? It could be like, I don't know, maybe UML diagrams or swim lanes, any specific tools. It could be principles, or it could be specific tools that software that is available to work on these algorithms, because obviously it is complicated, right?
Right. Maybe some things which I'm not aware, but I think because, as I told, this is one of the very very core things of your thing, right? So ultimately you will require a lot of flexibility at your end, right? I somehow feel you will end up if you use some standard tools also, it will be down the line. It should not become restrictive,
right?
Because so some things which are very core, it's always good to have complete control over it. So that's what we felt. We created this tool in house.
Okay.
For our algorithm creation tool itself, we have created in house.
Okay.
So that because we wanted the complete control over the things, right?
Okay, great. And what would you talk in terms of scalability? I think, do you think scalability is an issue that you need to think about early on while creating the algorithm, or you can't really predict and it has to be like kind of changed?
Yeah, so this is like again, it may not be generic, but I think so basically you have to, of course you have to whatever product you are designing, it has to, you should provision like it should be scalable, there's no doubt about it. But sometimes it becomes difficult if you try to over engineer upfront, right? Your time to market will suffer, right? And in our case specifically, this and the product development is an ongoing thing. Like in TradersCockpit, it's more than 4 years still we are working on new modules, right? So there's a trade-off. Like you have to get the core things up, do it fast, do it agile, and then throw it out to the customers, because ultimately customer feedback and customers are the people who will design the future roadmap of the product, right? And if you have got your engineering right upfront and you use the right technology stack, you can always scale it up down the line. If you are struggling for scale, like that's a good problem. Like if you have reached a stage where you are struggling for scale, there will be a lot of people to help you out. That means you have traction and you're not able to scale, right? So that's a good problem to have.
Right, excellent. And what about speed? So for example, I think one of the major criteria of your product specifically would be the speed at which the algorithm runs, right? So is that something that you thought about early on and you optimized for speed right at the beginning, or kind of along the way you kind of tried to add little tweaks here and there? Because I think it's always a bit of a balancing act, right, between speed and
right. So just maybe just to clarify a bit, I think there are two types of in trading industry. There are two types of algorithms. One is like high frequency trading, and one is like a low frequency trading. High frequency trading is like where your decision making is like multiple times within a microsecond, like that sort of a thing. So that product is not tailor-made for retailers, right? And there are so many regulations in India for that, right? So that is so we are not into HFTs. We are into like low frequency trading, where the decision making is in a minute or 5 minutes and all. So first of all, that clarification there, because for HFT, you have to, the servers and all have to be co-located with the exchange and all. And that the economics of scale doesn't work. That type of product will not be able to serve the retailers. The costing will not work. So we are not into HFT, and that's not we are very different. We are like more into LFTs, but of course then also speed matters, right? So it's again it's that's one of the core thing when you engineer a product. If you write, if you design all the things were incorporated at the design time, so that we are able to scale. Now we can scale by when the load, we can scale as the load increases, right? So horizontal scaling and all can be done, but if we have got the engineering right. So we had a very smart engineering team which
took care of a lot of the details. So I think that's great. I just have I think I'll have two questions. One is obviously your technology stack matters a lot when it comes to algorithms, right? Since you're a financial product, so can you just say or recommend any good technology stack for our listeners who could be maybe working with similar, it needn't be financial, they could be working with high amounts of data, similar problems they might be having, high amounts of data, accessing and making these frequent changes. So is there any tips you could give in terms of technology stack?
I can think like there are three most popular is one is there's a good financial library in the Python stack also. Then there's a language called R, which is like tailor-made for statistical programming. So if you are R is quite easy to learn and implement. And The third is like the full-fledged Java stack, right? So so these are the three which I find more popular right now in the financial sector. Either take it on a Python or a Python stack or a Java stack, or if R can solve, if it's a proprietary sort of a solution, maybe R is also good enough.
Okay, excellent. Last question, can you just give us some tips on algorithm design? So obviously we know that each algorithm is individual and per the product, but if you had to pick top two or three mantras for algorithm design, or top 2 or 3 most important factors in an algorithm design, what would those factors be according to you?
So in my opinion, I think one of the key things should be like, if the way you are designing the algorithm, if the components of that can be reused later, right? Because there's some things which will always come up where you don't have to rewrite everything. You can pick up something from the effort which you've already put. So if you can, the way you implement your algorithms, you can always compartmentize in a way where some things can be reused later, which I think in our context also is very, very similar, because we test a lot of trading systems, right? So some parts of trading systems we can always inherit from the previous trading system.
Right.
So I think this should be true for everything. The second is, I think the way you are designing, ultimately sooner or later it should be scalable also. So if there is something which you have not got it right, you will have a point of no return in that way, right? So I think if two things, if you want to ask me, it should be reusable and scalable.
Right, excellent. So yeah, reusable and make it such that it scales, because I think if you make it in a way that it can't scale, then you have to rewrite the entire algorithm.
So that's exactly
big time and cost effective. Okay, thanks. That was very informative and very useful. So now let's get back to our main topic, which is about you. So your co-founder is Anurag Sabu, right? So how did you guys meet? Okay, there are several questions here. How important is co-founders? Number 2. And what advice would you give for people starting out with regards to getting a good co-founder?
Right. In our case, me and Anurag met through a common friend. Like in my previous startup, one of my colleague was classmate of Anurag. He was from IITB. So that's where why the synergy is because we had the same pain points, right? So it was like related to trading, investing and everything. So that common pain point was there. Regarding the co-founders, like of course, I'm not a great believer that you need to have a best of friends to be co-founders. Sometimes maybe it's better you are not the best of friends, so that but you have to have respect of each other's ability. So if you have a complementary skills, great, and you need to have like utmost respect of, because that's something which the responsibility of is very clearly differentiated in that way. That's the complementary skills, and you should be able to question each, like the healthy arguments is very, very important, right? In a startup, there will be so many disagreements, so you have to have a constructive argument so that we can take a best decision from the company point of view. So both have to be like, both should be free in that way to have that argument going, right? And of course, co-founder, I personally feel, because it's such a lonely, if you are a single co-founder, and there are very successful startups which have single co-founder, but I think it's helpful to have at least one more co-founder, so that you can always brainstorm a lot of things, which validate a lot of things, right? So, and the complementary skills, because it's very unlikely that you can be a technologist and you are good at marketing and you are good at talking to people, you are good at sales, right? So it's always good to have co-founders from different skills, so that you can build a team around that co-founder.
Right, excellent. Right. That's great advice. Now we just have another 3 or 4 questions. So let's talk about inspiring our listeners. Startups come with a lot of pressure, right? So can you give us some tips on how we can handle pressure when things aren't going well? A lot of times things don't go well in startups. So
yeah, that it will not go well more often. So if I have to tell, I think it's transparency with your employees. I think because you have to share good news. I've experienced, like in many companies, they don't share the bad news, but I think one culture which we adopt here is we share the bad news, because if you don't share anyway, they will figure it out sooner or later. So it's always better to have so it's good in a longer run. That's better, because anyway you have already taken care that your employees are self motivated. So sharing a deal which you might have not won, or an investor which you have turned you down, right? That doesn't affect your day-to-day activities. So transparency is one of the things which we take care. Second is for your personal thing, I think if you can manage your time, like if you are very clear, prior to in startup you will be so many things to do and lack of resources, lack of time, right? So as I think which we try to do, it's not is prioritize the stuff, and you have to tell no for many things, right? If something is not doable, right? We should be very clear it's not doable. So if you do that, I think you'll be able to manage the stress levels better, right? That's what so if you prioritize your stuff, what to do, and don't have very unexpected, so you have, anyway we all are stretching to do it, but some things are not doable, so you should be able to say
so
no.
I think transparency is key to building and maintaining trust, so I think that's really great advice. Now, can you tell us about your worst entrepreneurial moment and the lessons you learned from that experience?
Right. So there's a couple of things, like you may be doing everything right, you have the right team, the great idea and everything. Something like timing also has to be right. So my previous startup, it was a great startup, great mind, set of people, whatever I've learned from there. But then also we were not like super successful because I think we were ahead of time. We were working on some things which now after 10 years those products have materialized, right? So we were into I'm talking about 2000 to 2005 time, when we were working on something e-learning, Kindle type products and all that sort of thing, right? So timing is important, that's one thing. So in our case, I think when we started, we were initially thinking TradersCockpit as a B2B2C product, because this product, to reach out to the direct traders, it was difficult for me to. So we actually approached a lot of brokerage companies to sell our technology to them, right? So that I thought this technology will be very useful for them to go to their clients. But then we realized that's something which they were not looking for. So that was a decision point. I thought like everything is over. So maybe that was a decision when we started. We thought it's a product for B2B, but then we figured out now we have to see it either as a failure or take as an opportunity and make it a B2C directly, where we can control our destiny in a more controlled way. So that was one big decision which we took like 3-4 years back. So
and it turned out well, right?
Yeah, it's still, at least we are able to pursue what we want to pursue. We are able to survive. We are able to have retain the team, and we are able to make products like FundExpert and all. If that would not have happened, we would not have.
Right. I mean, it's always better that surviving is any day better than being a failure, right? So that's great. Now FundExpert is just recently launched, but your TradersCockpit has been running for 4 years, you mentioned, and hindsight is always 2020, right? So if there is one thing that you would do different when starting out TradersCockpit, what would you have done?
Okay, then maybe the concept of FundExpert we could have incorporated 2 years back. See what happened? Yeah, exactly. Right. We could have tried supporting more asset classes much earlier than what we are doing, right? So to be very honest, like one of the other mistake, maybe just to answer that thing we got right, was the sample size of when maybe our sample size was a bit biased about that professional traders. So initially we thought there are like a lot of takers for these tools also, but that was maybe there was a biasness in our sample size when we did our market research. So that was the reason it took us a little bit more time than it would have taken. Right. So that's something which I could have corrected, is launch a product like FundExpert maybe 2 years ahead of time. But again, the key differentiation in algorithms, I'm not sure how useful it would have become,
how mature
that would have become. Exactly. Right. So we think like
okay, great. Now I just have one final question, but before that, how can our listeners get in touch with you? Obviously they can come via FundExpert.in and get in touch with you officially, but personally, if they want to reach out to you for asking any questions or mentorship or want some advice, etc., what's the best way? Are you active on LinkedIn, Twitter? Do you have a blog? What's email? What's the best way to reach out to you?
Right. So one is direct email. So it's as simple as amit@fundexpert.in. And the second is we do also have an interesting blog which we have started for blog.fundexpert.in. So I definitely request your viewers to have a look and be as blunt as if you like the thing. So And I am on Twitter also. I'm not that active, but Quora Twitter is something you will find my handle. You could just search my
we will. You can give that to me offline.
Yeah, you can.
So we will put links of that on the show notes page so that people can. Before I move on to the last question, I actually have one more question. I said that was the last, but can you talk about the pricing of your product, the FundExpert product? So, what does it cost for a retail investor to join, and what does it cost for them to use your different services?
FundExpert has 3 services. One is a Flexi Invest, which is like for an informed guy, like who are self-pickers, who know which fund they can choose. So they can directly invest in the fund of their choice, or our algorithms also give you choice of the best 5 funds. So it's absolutely, so all our 3 services are absolutely free.
Right.
So Safe Invest is the other product, which is tailor-made for retired people and FD lovers. So basically the money is invested in safe funds, but some tax benefits and all are there. And the third, which is our key offering, is Robo Invest, which is more into complete profile management, so it takes care end to end, basically from your once you sign up till you achieve all your different goals, right? It not only picks funds for you, it invests for you, it tracks for you, it rebalances when it requires. As of now, Robo Invest service is also free.
Okay.
But maybe down the line, Robo Invest service is something which we may have to monetize down the line.
Okay. And just in the interest of full disclosure here, I think the reason why the services are free is that you would be getting some kind of a very small percentage from the
so that's the only thing you're absolutely right. We have to keep it going, right? So there is a AUM, the asset under management, what we manage. There is a standard protocol with any distributor make, right? So we get some payment from the fund house.
Great. So we'll move on to the final question, but before that, I just want to take the time to acknowledge and thank you for sharing your knowledge to myself and our listeners. I think this financial product is something that is very, very necessary for the Indian market, especially. I think a lot of people are still fixated on fixed deposits, and they don't understand the power of investing in equities and the kind of returns they can make. We had a great chat before this. We spent almost half an hour, 1 hour talking about a lot of different tips and tricks. So I really appreciate that too. So with that, we'll move on to the final question. If there is one gyan that you could give our would-be founders, only one gyan, forget that you ever gave this interview, forget that we talked for about 45 minutes. If there's just one gyan, one advice that you could give our would-be founders, what would that be?
So if you really, I'm assuming if you really believe there is a problem to be solved, then there is no right time or wrong time to start, and just go for it. Basically, you will not regret it. At least it's better if you think you can solve a problem, it's worth a try. The other things will take care of itself.
Right. So it's better to try and fail rather than not try.
That's right. And in a bigger picture, these small things will not matter. After 10, 12, 15 years when you'll review, it's at least you tried, right? So
excellent advice, Amit. Thank you so much for your time. It was a real pleasure chatting with you, and wish you continued success in your venture.
Thanks a lot for having me here. Hope it's it's a learning for me also for the chat what we had prior to this. Okay. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Tushar, thank you so much for coming on the show to answer questions with regards to IP, trademark, and all those jazzy stuff. If any of you listeners out there have a question that you'd like Tushar to answer, please use the hashtag #AskMarcas, that is AskMarcas, on Facebook and Twitter, and we will pick out the most interesting questions and answer them in an upcoming episode of FoundersGyan. So thanks again, Tushar, for agreeing to answer some of our listeners' questions.
My pleasure, Ram.
Also, a quick disclaimer: this advice is general in nature. If you have specific questions with regards to your brand or your trademark, we suggest consulting a lawyer before taking any advice that you hear on this podcast. I've seen a lot of people getting confused between trademark, copyright, and patent. Can you explain the basic difference among these three?
Trademark is any mark which can be used to distinguish a product from similar or same products. It could be a name, logo, tagline, combination of colors, or even a particular smell. So basically any mark which can distinguish your brand from the others. Then copyright is a form of protection given to the creators or authors of original literary, artistic, musical, and few other intellectual works. Then patent is the exclusive right given to use an invention in lieu of making it public. So like if someone wants to register a patent, he has to register his invention. He has to come public with his invention.
Okay, what is trademark? How does it help an enterprise or a business?
A trademark is a word, phrase, symbol, or design that identifies and distinguishes the source of the goods of one party from those of others. Say for example, McDonald's uses their golden arc to signify the location of their restaurant. So basically that arc signifies that yes, this is McDonald's. People can identify this particular brand with the help of their trademark.
Okay. What are the important factors to keep in mind while registering a trademark?
Important things to keep in mind while registering a trademark are it should be distinctive, it should not be descriptive, abusive, or against public sentiments. Even you should make sure that the word which you are registering should not be a generic word. So it should be unique or a coined word. So the chances of getting the trademark increases substantially.
Okay, thanks Tushar for your time in answering these questions. For a limited time, Marcas is offering free filing of trademark. You just have to pay the government registration fees. More details can be had on www.marcas.in. Thank you very much, Tushar, once again for your time.
Thank you, Ram. Thank you for having me on your show again.
There you have it, folks. Another inspiring startup and its story. Do check out foundersgyan.com/EP51 for the show notes to links for all that we talk about on the show. You can also leave a comment on what you like or dislike about the show on the same page. I'll see you all next week with yet another startup and its founder. In the meantime, do keep putting in efforts on your own startup. Remember that action is better than listening to 100 different podcasts. So hopefully you'll take the learnings and implement it. Bye for now and have a great rest of the week ahead.